Welcome back to tOdi Secrets, the mini-series in which we dive deep and peel back the curtain to reveal the behind-the-scenes secrets of why Pillywig has the official rank of Chief?
Spoiler alert, I don't know!
Episode 13, Calamity. I have been very excited to get to this episode because Calamity is, bar none, the video I had the most fun making. End of sentence. I was unreasonably excited and motivated when making this episode. I actually made the entire thing in about 2.5 days, literally over a weekend. The grass field era is kind of iconic in retrospect, and it was fun while it lasted, but it was also very creatively constrictive. I was essentially working with a prolonged bottle episode type of plot for multiple years. So finally being free to introduce so many new locations and characters and elements was unimaginably refreshing and reinvigorating in terms of my creativity and motivation for tOdi. Another reason why I was very excited going into Calamity was because Calamity was actually originally about 4 or 5 different episodes. In fact, episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16 were all collectively about 9 or 10 episodes in my original tOdi outline that I had written sometime around episode 10 or 11. After releasing episode 12 and reflecting on things, I decided emphatically that I wanted to pay off episode 12's big cliffhanger in one video. I didn't want to string you guys along and make the series as tedious as it had been up until this point. During this final climactic story arc, I just couldn't imagine the pacing working out well. Calamity opens in Alcatraz, which is, in and of itself, probably the penultimate example of my personal rule, or more so guideline, where I like to go with my first idea for everything. And yeah, I mean, Alcatraz, just as a name, there's no joke, there's no cleverness, it's just alcohol combined with Alcatraz. It's so fucking stupid, but I kinda love it. You know, another reason why this episode was so fun to make was that shooting indoors again genuinely felt like a luxury after years of shooting outside, whether it's just the sun glaring on your LCD screen, or, you know, inconsistent weather conditions, or just time of year making it impossible to film. Filming tiny objects on ground level outside is not always super fun. The T-Rexes being prison guards is supposed to be some subtle Jane foreshadowing, like, you know, we're seeing that the various minions and henchmen she has acquired are all fellow tyrannosaurs, and the dialogue does make this detail pretty pointed. And the Carcharodontosaurid prisoners is another bit of Jane foreshadowing, though it's more of a DI reference than anything, because Jane's villain backstory in tOdi doesn't really have anything to do with Carcharodontosaurs or Carcharodontosaurus specifically, whereas in DI it does. So this is kind of a weird late-stage DI reference in tOdi. Again, I never completely escaped the DI references, even though I kind of tried to. This line from Blizzard where he says, "Truly shameful," is taken directly from another tOdi video that I think I will wait to discuss at a later date. Okay, so another exciting, enjoyable aspect of this episode was splitting apart the main 9 characters. It was, of course, very intentional to split apart Blizzard, Silas, and Grant to, you know, get them away from each other, to give them all a chance to bounce off of some other characters. It was also very intentional to pair Blizzard with Hammer and Razor, because Razor at this point is a mute, and Hammer does not speak English, and I figured if any character could make up for the two characters who more or less don't speak, it's the one who can't stop talking. And all of this also resulted in Grant and Katie being paired, which was a pretty unlikely kind of duo, but it turns out they have pretty good chemistry, and people really like this pair of characters together, and in fact, I've even seen people shipping them. It was also cool to give some characters just more of a chance to actually speak and kind of express their respective personalities, specifically Katie, Anubis, Jane. A lot of very minor characters finally started getting a lot more focus and screen time. And then we are introduced to Pillywig and the Cult of Green Floodlights. I don't have much to say about Pillywig. I chose that specific Chinosaur Pachycephalosaurus just because I thought it fit the voice I had come up with pretty well. And in general, yeah, I just had this idea for a character who was sort of superficially quite friendly, but in the most unsettling way possible. The one notable thing about Pillywig, though, is where his name comes from. Ages ago, my friend Eric made a video about bird common names, and it was a video essentially making fun of bird common names by making up a bunch of fake ones. And I contributed the yellow-crowned Pillywig, yellow-breasted Pillywig. I don't remember the entire name, but I know it ended in Pillywig. Skip, Flip, Chip, and Dip are also worth explaining. Specifically, why do I own 4 Papopolacanthus? Why, God, why? So, if you've been around on the BionicleSaurus channel for any length of time, you might know that the Papopolacanthus is famously one of my most hated figures of all time. Is it really the worst figure I've ever seen? No, not by a long shot, but for some reason, it just became kind of a known thing that I fucking hated. And it's funny because my original review of it, of the copy I bought back when the figure was released, was a pretty neutral, maybe even mildly positive review. But obviously, my opinion shifted for the worse. And so, in light of that, David, Spino Dude, sent me his Papopolacanthus in probably like 2019 or 2020, I'm gonna guess. And then in 2021, David and Aiden got me 2 more. And there's even a video of me unboxing them, if you're curious. So yeah, that's how I ended up with 4 Papopolacanthus. Long story short, my friends are demons. We also see the return of the old flip potato camera as once again a dimension hopper. And we get a weird sort of timestamp here in the form of an Among Us reference.
They do seem kinda sus. Pretty sure I saw Skip venting earlier.
Then we move on and meet the Interrogator, who is a character that I kind of just improvised. I just needed someone to interrogate Blizzard, Razor, and Hammer, and I didn't think too hard about his personality or voice or overall demeanor, but people really liked him, especially one specific commenter who is more or less responsible for Interrogator being featured in later episodes at all. We also finally get to hear Blizzard's canonical full name for the first ever time. We get to hear Blizzard H'. Yes, it is spelled like this. We also get to hear Razor's canonical name, which is Razor Raptorius, which is maybe not one of the finest examples of my always going with my first idea thing. We also get a pretty on-the-nose hint towards Hammer's secret identity, with Interrogator starting to say Hammer the attack dinosaur and stopping himself. We also get an Attack on Titan reference in this scene.
Oh, let's see. Well, first off, I'm the Armored Titan and he's the Colossal Titan. We're not hiding anything, you asshole!
Fine. And we get a tool reference in the form of Stinkfist blasting beeping in the background, and Blizzard quoting the songs Third Eye and Disgustipated. Well, I finally get to explain the origin of the name Bloodthought. This actually comes from an honest-to-God misspelling of Bloodtooth. Ages ago, I got a comment on Season 4, Episode 4 of Dinosaur Island, the episode where infamously Bloodtooth gruesomely dies, and the comment simply reads, "Goodbye, Blowed Thought." This scene also features the first proper name drop of BTJ. Then we meet the children of the cardboard, who I'll talk about more next episode. And this scene also features the first ever fuck in tOdi. And it is censored, as I mentioned in part 2. I wanted to introduce swearing sort of gently and gradually. I didn't want anyone to be too jarred. In retrospect, it's a little weird hearing just the classic censor beep sound in tOdi. Kinda takes me out of it a little. Then we get a Radiohead reference, specifically a reference to the song Fitter Happier, which is kinda fun because Monster Island Buddies also referenced Fitter Happier. And the reference isn't just in the form of Pillywig quoting the lyrics in this scene, but also much more subtly earlier on when he's showing all of the cult's weird festive traditions.
And there's where we tie the cats to their sticks.
Ooh, it's time for some more Jane foreshadowing.
It would be horrible if either of you were to be caught by that thing out there. Or if I was, of course.
Nigel plays this off as her being very selfless, when in reality she presumably just knows that she could, reveal her identity to Bloodthought, and ergo be fine. And Silas actually draws attention to how weird this is.
Yeah.
And the episode ends with the first ever proper appearance of Cryo. Episode 14. Argleblorg! If Calamity was the episode I was most excited to make, Hammer was the episode I was most excited to release. By the point the episode actually came out, I had known about Berserker Hammer and her, now infamous first appearance for a long time. So it was very, very hype to finally be unveiling her. The opening scene of this episode essentially completely reveals Hammer's secret identity, and even gives us our first proper attack dinosaur name drop. And I went back and forth for a while on whether or not this was a good idea, because on the one hand, it does kind of diminish how surprising Berserker Hammer could have been. My reasoning for including it was just that without this scene, I think her rampage during this episode's climax would have been a little too out of nowhere, been a little too poorly set up. The following scene was heavily inspired by Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, specifically Season 2, Episode 4, the episode iconically featuring Warren the Eagle, one of the all-time greatest fictional characters ever put to screen. I knew from the beginning that Cryo was supposed to be a straight man, that he was supposed to be a super serious, straight-faced action hero guy dude, and I wasn't entirely sure how to actually make that funny. And Warren's character on Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared really did give me the answer, because he is, for the most part, a very played straight character, and what makes him funny is the other characters making fun of him and pointing out how cringy he is in a borderline fourth wall breaking manner. And I just loved that idea, so I ripped it off wholesale. And this episode even includes a direct quote from the Warren the Eagle episode.
You just seem sort of generally unlikable in a way that's hard to pin down.
Then we get Anubis's death, which is, ironically, one of my favorite scenes featuring Anubis. We also get the random side character with a gun, which is a great example of a placeholder name that I just ended up using because why not? Now's also probably a good time to discuss Pillywig and the Plants vs. Zombies soundtrack, because it plays every time the man is on screen. And yeah, there's not really a super specific reason for it. Honestly, I just thought it kind of fit his personality somehow. We get more Jane foreshadowing with her quote-unquote guessing the passcode correctly for this super secure door. And of course, the passcode itself is a Blade Runner reference. And then we have Hammer's Rampage. Not a ton to say. A very fun scene to film. This is really why the Children of the Cardboard exist, why they are, of course, cardboard, because I needed some kind of monster, some kind of enemy for Hammer to really be able to physically rip apart. And cardboard just, made the most sense. I should probably address how Berserker Hammer is, of course, quite similar to Duke Nukem. She doesn't really do the Duke Nukem voice, but her personality, her kind of intonation, and mannerisms are obviously very Duke-inspired. This isn't really intended as a super deliberate reference. Duke Nukem is more so just the best direct source of inspiration I could find for this character. Razor also breaks his silence in this scene, very subtly and briefly.
Wait, what?
We also get a reference in this episode to the absolute YouTube classic Attack on Titan in 9 minutes.
That's another day for the Survey Corps!
So, this set only had 2 walls, and for 180-degree rule-related, just filming logistics reasons, between episodes 13 and 14, I actually had to flip the overall orientation of the entire set. I had to spin it around, basically. And it's kind of weird, because you can't really tell in the video, but I know it's in a different orientation just in the room it's in. Episode 15. Exposition. It's an entire episode about exposition. I literally named it Exposition. The title is honestly one of my favorite parts of the episode. I have in my notes that allegedly Eric came up with this backwards brain surgery line from Nigel. I don't remember if that's true, but sure. Ooh, but there is an entire interaction, an entire sequence of dialogue that my friend Aiden just improv'd one night, and I used it.
Lizard, if you keep going off like this, I will end you. Oh, please, you couldn't end me if you tried. If anything, you'd wind up starting me.
Oh, you mean like turn you on?
No, he means finish. Yeah, I mean finish.
We also get more of the scalpels running joke with Nigel, and a very, very explicit Dinosaur Island reference, with Silas literally meeting his past alternate reality self from season 2 of DI. This was a fun sequence. Originally, I was going to have these characters travel through a lot more different weird dimensions. Ultimately, this was clearly the best idea out of all those dimensions, so I just decided to highlight this one. And the sound effects in this scene are completely authentic and literally taken from Dinosaur Island Season 2. Editing BionicleSaurus here. Yes, there is raw camera audio in this scene. I decided not to record the character's VA with raw camera audio to differentiate them as not being from this dimension, but yes, there is unaltered onboard audio as ambience. And then they finally get to their intended destination, which is just a random alien planet, I guess? We learn first and foremost that this entire situation is basically one big setup. Grant was intentionally given the DIY Dimension Hopper kit by Dartclaw. We learn that Cryo shot Silas. We learn quite a bit about the organization and Dartclaw and BTJ and the coordinate, and of course, the attack dinosaur, the group, the main characters, finally all learn about Hammer's secret identity, and we also confirm that canonically, her noises, the iconic Argleblargs, are the language of the gods, which is interesting because we meet the gods, and they speak English. This episode also contains a slew of fun little references and Easter eggs, like Blizzard explicitly by name referencing Dinosaur Island Season 1. We also have an End of Evangelion reference. We once again hear this classic stock gasp sound effect. We also get an Activision Blizzard reference, and an Attack on Titan name drop, which is about as on the nose as the Attack on Titan jokes ever get. And this mention of gambling with cats is actually a reference to a fairly obscure, I believe, Season 6 era Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode. And there's some other fun details in here, like Jane being the one to inquire about the cloaked figure's identity and the attack dinosaur, you know, intentionally asking about things she either already knows about or things she has ulterior motives to want to learn about. The improvised explosive in Cryo's backpack is finally payoff for the horrendous green screen explosion in episode 10, and we also get payoff for Blizzard and Silas eating the Chinasaur in episode 8. Then, of course, we must discuss Razor's death. Yeah, I killed one of the main 9 characters off screen. Partially as kind of a joke, just to say that I did it, but mostly because of what this sets up for episode 16. Then this scene concludes with a classic character cursing, only to be cut off by an explosion and cut to black moment, which is kind of fun. How did I forget to mention that there are multiple shots in this episode where Pillywig and Dartclaw respectively are hidden in the background. Obviously, they're not literally supposed to be there. It's more of just a foreshadowing thing, I guess. And then the episode ends with the summoning of all the villains. We finally see Crane terrorism, we get the first explicit mention of the rumbling, and a name drop for the final episode. A couple fun facts here. First of all these characters are standing on top of a printer and a paper shredder, and Crane terrorism's outfit, this glorious tiny princess costume, actually used to belong to my late bearded dragon Penny. Penny was an icon of this channel, and I actually don't think I've explicitly mentioned that she passed away a couple years ago, but yeah, R.I.P. Penny. Thank you for all the amazing memories. Your presence will be missed. Episode 16. Hey, it's the main character! This episode opens on Silas alone in the wilderness, and there's Chinasaurs for some reason. I'm assuming I added the Chinasaurs to try to bring some levity into these somewhat serious, somewhat forlorn opening moments. We get to watch Silas urinate on a tree for way too long. This was a joke I had written down in my document of just disconnected tOdi joke ideas ages ago, and I finally put it in an episode. We also get a little 4th of July reference.
Good God. The trees. The sun. The rocks. Nature is so beautiful in its way.
And the most notable thing about this whole opening sequence is that no green screen was used for this Silas flies through different locations scene. That might be kind of obvious because if I had used green screen, you know, he probably would have flown by the Eiffel Tower, Mount Rushmore, I don't know, the Statue of Liberty, and instead he flies by some locally sourced Washington State locations, and we get a little Demon Dad cameo. Then we get one of the hardest cuts in all of tOdi, and it truly was the only proper way to introduce the gods. The gods are a co-creation by me and my friend Eric. I don't necessarily remember who came up with which characters. I think Eric came up with Grinder. I think I probably came up with Robert. I know Eric came up with John and Smith. But yeah, the main point is, ages ago, I had the idea for the BOTM Ceratopsians to be gods in the tOdi universe. It just kind of makes sense. They're these big, much higher quality figures than everything else in the miniseries, and Eric helped me flesh out that idea into something more specific. And there are a lot of references hidden in here. David, the God of Reviews, is of course a Spino Dude reference, and Aiden, the God of David, is referencing my other friend KikiZilla101. Cornelius is a reference to, well, Cornelius. If you haven't heard of him before, here he is. And the reason the Protoceratops is named Tandy and has this weird quote about the Shawshank Redemption is actually all a Last Man on Earth reference.
Truly was a Shawshank Redemption.
And there's also some fun inspiration behind a couple characters here. Bethany's voice and entire personality is heavily inspired by Von Stroheim from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and Grinder's voice is based on Grenda from Gravity Falls. It was very fun finally getting to this episode, finally getting to, literally kill off Blizzard temporarily, though this episode was not entirely a breeze to produce, mainly because I had some real white balance issues when filming. My camera is not the greatest camera in the world, and I have pretty limited control over white balance. So much of this footage was extremely orange or green. I had to do way more severe color correction than I usually do. It was awful. And of course, in this episode, the fourth wall is shattered upon the ground in pieces, with Blizzard and Robert explicitly discussing tOdi as a YouTube series, name-dropping BionicleSaurus, and also explicitly addressing and sort of apologizing for Easter. Oh, I forgot I put in a little pitch meeting reference.
It's actually super easy. Barely an inconvenience.
And of course, we now finally learn why Razor was killed off screen. It's entirely because I needed Blizzard to do something so horrible it could even offend a god. Oh my gosh, this final scene had been planned for so long, and it was really fun finally seeing it come together. And yeah, I mean, talk about wholesome, serious moments in a normally extremely comedic and irreverent show. Again, these tonal shifts are very difficult to execute. Blizzard's character arc is literally just him realizing he's an asshole, not even necessarily deciding to change yet, just, you know, gaining a bit of self-awareness. On the one hand, this is a pretty funny and stupid character arc, but I also genuinely really like writing character arcs this way, where a character's journey is not necessarily a complete transformation, just a bit of revelation. It feels more subtle, I think probably more realistic. And Silas's arc being based around his friends being the one thing that keeps him going, it perhaps could have been set up a bit better, but I do think it flows well with his characterization up until this point. And to be clear, I had been planning it for a long time. There's also this line in here where Silas uses the word reason twice in a row in a sentence. I very intentionally kept this line the way it was, even though I definitely considered rewriting it, because I kind of liked the realism or authenticity it gave off. We also get another reference to the Great Juju at the bottom of the sea, which is kind of unfortunate given the Easter addressal earlier in the episode. Then Cryo shows up, explains that the other main characters have been captured, and then, once again, speaking of more serious moments in tOdi, Silas gets one hell of a speech. And a final little behind-the-scenes secret is the timeline of shooting this episode and Entropy. I actually shot the main battle sequence, the main central sequence of Entropy, before I shot anything for Blizzard. And so I didn't have to build part of the Entropy set early or anything like that for this cliffhanger. I was able to actually use footage from Entropy for it. Okay, I think that's it for part 3 of tOdi Secrets. Thank you so much for watching, and my friends, we only have one more episode left to cover. So tune in next time for Entropy!